And so what really makes the difference between them? What is the difference?
Hi.
Hello.
Hello. Guten Abend.
Guten Abend.
How are you all?
Everybody okay? Good. So, thank you for joining. Let's start with the prayers. In the Buddha, Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly, I take refuge until I attain enlightenment. Through the merit of practicing generosity and the rest, may I attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all beings. In the Buddha, Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly, I take refuge until I attain enlightenment. Through the merit of practicing generosity and the rest, may I attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all beings. In the Buddha, Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly, I take refuge until I attain enlightenment. Through the merit of practicing generosity and the rest, may I attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all beings. May all sentient beings enjoy happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the sacred happiness devoid of suffering. May they dwell in boundless equanimity that is free from attachment and aversion. With skillful means and compassion, you were born in the Sakya clan. Unconquerable others, you vanquish Mara's hordes. Your physical form resplendent like a mountain of gold. To you, the king of Shakyas, I pay homage. Good, I just mute those who don't speak. But you can always unmute yourself again. Good. So, welcome. I think today I received, 5 teachings on Bodhicaryavatara already. Today is a good Shantideva day. So on first chapter, second chapter, 5th chapter, and 9th chapter. And we are in the 6th chapter here. So I hope I don't mix anything up.
Arne, are you starting the first chapter elsewhere with another group as well?
No, I touched that already twice. I mean, with this group, we did that already. Which one, the first chapter you said?
Well, you said that you did several teachings today.
No, I received from different teachers.
Okay. Oh.
Is the first chapter being taught somewhere? Because I keep missing it.
Today also, that was more like a summary, like for half an hour. Yes, because Dotolko started the second chapter. First chapter, yeah. Even first chapter is like sort of easy, no, to read. It is like Khyentse Rinpoche says, that is it shows the benefit or profit of bodhicitta, so that that you really, we need, in the West, he says, we need to know the benefit of it, like what is in for me, that kind of thing, So that is shown in the beginning, in the first chapter, where Shantideva is really praising bodhicitta so highly, and if we have that wish in our mind, like enlightening sentient beings, or guiding them to enlightenment, or wanting to attain enlightenment, that bodhicitta, that is the birth of Dharma, basically, that is how it is explained, because thanks to that we become bodhisattvas, thanks to that we become Buddhas, thanks to that we will teach the Dharma, and so this thought is so precious. And that, yeah, and then in the 5th verse of the 1st chapter, Shantideva is saying, it's so rare, like this flash of lightning, in the dark, we have like a totally dark and ignorant mind, and then sort of accidentally or through the blessing of the teacher or the leakage of our Buddha nature, then bodhicitta dawns in us, and then everything gets brighter. And then, yeah, and then Shantideva explains, how bodhicitta is superior to other virtues, because it includes not only few sentient beings, but all sentient beings. And it's not only aiming at a temporal benefit, but it aims at the ultimate benefit, like for liberation. And then it is not, the action of bodhicitta is not like something that is like short, like half an hour, but it is until samsara ends, as long we want to develop that bodhicitta. And then the 4th thing is also the suffering that is removed is not like temporal, but it's forever. Like the example is if you offer lunch to a couple of people, then there's a benefit, but it's only a short happiness that comes out of that. It's only for few people. It's not the ultimate benefit. Whereas if you bring people to, or beings to enlightenment, that is really the ultimate and long-lasting benefit. And then he's also giving a few examples, how bodhicitta is, like alchemy and like the fire that is burning all the pleasures. Something like that. I think it's quite easy to read. Yeah, and I think it's also talked about bodhicitta has to be courageous, because as a bodhisattva, you are ready to ready to appear in samsara again and again for the sake of sentient beings. And so you have to be fearless, even to go through suffering for them. You have to be fearless because the sentient beings are infinite in numbers, and the suffering is infinite in number. And yeah, I think these are like the points that I mentioned in the 1st chapter, just to inspire us, to appreciate that we can develop bodhicitta. And that is what makes our life to a precious human life, I think. And there are some masters who say, that we really have bodhicitta is that we really mean it. That is very rare. Like many people talk about it, that is of course good. But then if somebody has really that concern, and cannot bear the suffering of others, that is so rare, and that somebody really from their heart wants to help others and therefore attain Buddhahood, that is also rare. Emilia, what did you want to say?
Well, as I'm listening to you, Arne, I recently a friend of mine, he sent me is a poem that is beautiful on looking at samsara, but seeing aversion and also attachment, not going for either way, not just staying with a calm mind and so on and so forth. It was a long poem, was really beautiful. But what I thought was really, for me, was really interesting. It was all about, it felt like it was a lot about me, in the sense of I've got to get my mind. In no moment in that long poem mention anything about cherishing others, anything to do with bodhicitta. It was like the practice of self-liberation, basically. And I was honest with him. I said, yeah, but it didn't touch my heart. But I thought it was really interesting, the experience, to actually read the poem. And it's really very meaningful because, yeah, if we go for the aversion, if we go for the attachment, I mean, the thing just keeps going. It's just, you know, but at the same time, it was missing the bodhicitta part. Anyway, and also linking, it's not directly related to anger, but it's related to bodhicitta. People where I live here, and many others, and I'm sure throughout the world, when the winter comes, depending on the kind of place you have mice, you have rats, that they come inside, and they procreate, and you can have an infestation, and then, yeah, and I had to make a judgment call because I was getting them running all below here, the floor. It was really massive and very painful. But then, where is the, how to put this? I felt I was prioritizing not bricks, because it's a wooden place, over lives. And at the same time, all that people mention about the diseases that they can pass, which are unfortunately, this is true. This is genuine. If you have an infestation and they start to come in all over the place, you know, and it really felt that I was being, oh, what's the word? Hypocritical with bodhicitta. Is, you know what I mean? But at the same time, it's like, what I do if I just let it be and I end up with an infestation? And then, would that be really practicing bodhicitta, or would end up being more, in a way, going borderline with being more not thinking straight? Because if they continued, because they were in lots of different places in the house, you may end up being infected. Of course, you don't know, but you know what I mean? It's it felt really hypocritical to me. I can't believe that I'm having to prioritize this place where I live over them. But then what to do? I didn't have the means to stop. There wasn't even a place to put the, they put the, oh, what's the name? It's not a cage. The traps, the live traps, where you can just take them elsewhere. I didn't have that. They were straight in the walls, under the floor. It was insane for weeks. So I procrastinated for weeks. Anyway, folks, I think maybe some of you have been the same kind of dilemma. I've met others in Sweden, but people don't think twice. They get the cats out, and they get the cats to do the dirty work. I don't. My cat stays indoors.
No, it happens often, I mean, often people have, I don't know, lices or fleas or mice, and then, the best, of course, the best is the protection, that they can't even come in at the first place. But once they are there, then it takes time. But hopefully one is able to take them out alive, in some way, But then also, if you have whatever disease, like infectious disease, whatever virus or bacteria we have, the body is killing it. Either they die or we die. That's unfortunately the case. I'm not even talking about taking antibiotics. But if I get a germ, if my immune system is not killing it, I will die, you know. So that is that doesn't make it right, you know, but that is happening so often. And if you work as a doctor, then of course you have then even to give antibiotics and intentionally kill the parasites or germs. And you do that then you, I don't know, you calculate and say, okay, that is a human being, and maybe this life is more precious. And also that human being, in that human being, so billions of bacteria are living, and so you can maybe justify it like that. But of course, it's always it's never an ideal decision, you know, because some rats might die on the way. Of course.
Yeah.
Okay, let's come to the text, okay? Because we are already in the 6th chapter, where Shantideva is, of course, talking about patience, and he's praising patience because the opposite, like anger or aversion or hatred or revenge or rage, is problematic and destroying so many good things in our mind, like our merit. It's harming us and others, karmically speaking, or just hurting the feelings of others. And also we become very restless and sleepless, and we become ugly when we're angry, you know, those very temporary side effects. But yeah, the biggest thing is, it destroys so many goodness in us, you know, so much merit, and therefore it destroys like future lives even, you know, because we destroy the merit that would have led to a great future life. And so therefore Shantideva is giving us many different tools how to deal with difficult situations. And to make it very obvious, he's often using the example of an enemy, you know, the enemy that is harming us and therefore putting us in a difficult situation or an unwanted situation, and then how to deal with that. And I guess we talked until verse 25, and Shantideva is introducing that the enemy who is harming us is not really doing that out of intention, you know, that they are not born, you know, to harm us, or they don't wake up in the morning and say, okay, today I will create a lot of difficulties, but that they are sort of don't have choice, but that they are overwhelmed by negative emotions. And then these negative emotions also don't decide to arise, but they arise through many different causes and conditions. So that is where we are at the moment, to see that, first of all, the enemy is not always bad, but it's just sometimes the anger is arising, and then the enemy has no control, but becomes an enemy and is harming us. And then also the anger itself is not just there, but it's also arising due to many causes and conditions. I think that's where we are. And today it's get a little bit technical. I think last time I was sort of not looking forward to those verses, but today we can't escape them anymore. But 26 is still doable easily. I will share it. That's 26. So here, Shantideva is talking about the conditions that, for example, produce the anger in the enemy. So these conditions that assemble together have no intention to produce anything. And neither does their product have the intention to be produced. So the conditions are that we will talk about that. You know, there are different factors that come together, and then anger arises. So, and these factors, they don't have any intention. And likewise, the result, which is the anger, also didn't have any intention to arise. So, and what kind of factors do we have? Normally, yeah, the anger comes when we when like different things come together. You know, when we have like the habit is a big factor. You know, and in Abhidharma it's called like subtle increasers. You know, they are like subtle tendencies that are stored in our mind, that are sort of dormant there, you know, or hibernating. And then when we come in contact with an object that usually triggers our emotions, then these tendencies will be awakened or activated. And then a third thing has to join in, which is like an incorrect thinking. So, for example, if I have an enemy, and I haven't seen that enemy for a long time, but still I have this grudge towards that person. That is sort of the first thing, you know, the subtle tendency that I have of grudge or aversion. And then if that person then enters into the room, then is sort of the proximity with the object, with this person. Then is the second factor that sleeping aversion is getting activated and strong. And then comes also on top of that this incorrect view. That means, you know, that I perceive that person as my enemy, you know, or that I don't perceive the background of that person, so I don't really understand the person. And I think this person wants to harm me, you know, and I don't understand that this person has no choice. That would be one example for that. Another example is we can talk about drugs or alcohol. You know, let's say I have a little too much attachment to those things, and then if I'm at a party and then people bring the drugs, you know, and put them on the table, you know, then the proximity to the drugs then activates my desire. And then the third point is again my incorrect thinking, that I think, that is a good thing to do. That makes me happy, that makes me forget my problems, and then I take the drugs. So like these three things together. So and the point is, why the commentators explain it in this verse is that anger is not coming out of itself, or it's not coming randomly, but is coming because it is arising because of the coming together of these different causes and conditions. That is, I think, here the main main point. I don't know. And this habitual tendencies, that is really a big topic in Abhidharma or in Buddhism in general, you know, that we have these tendencies and they just need to be activated and then they manifest. That is also how karma will be explained and all of that. Yeah. Oh, Marina. Oh, Marina, you wrote me an email, right?
Yes.
Yes. Let's talk about Shantideva next time, a little bit. Yes.
Thank you. So maybe this is a little outside the scope of this session. So, you know, just let me know, but I guess the way that I'm hearing that this verse right now is that if certain causes and conditions come together, then there's no intention, it'll just kind of manifest, right? Whether it's anger or desire, attachment. And maybe this is a little outside the scope, but it sounds like almost like that the causes and conditions have, like they're actually there. And I guess I'm thinking a little bit more from the concept of right now, ultimately there's nothing there. So do causes and conditions have an ultimate like substance, not substance, but like, so I don't know if I'm going maybe a little beyond, but it's just reading it or hearing this verse right now has a lot of weight to it, meaning that it feels like there is an actual person out there. There is an actual set of like negative habituations in here, even if I don't understand, why they're there, which feels very heavy, or I don't know if I'm making much sense, or it feels very like
solid.
ultimate.
Yeah. No, we are Shantideva has many tools in his toolbox, and later he will play the absolute card also, So then if he is introducing emptiness, then I think even an opponent is saying, anyway, Shantideva is introducing emptiness also as a remedy to anger, aversion, and everything, Of course, that is the medicine for all, this panacea, or what it's called, because emptiness works against all different against all kleshas, yes. And he's even like teaching that so strongly, even in the 6th chapter, then the opponent is asking, oh, if everything is empty, why do we need even patience? So why are we talking about patience? Okay, that is just a teaser. We were talking about that. But at the moment, we are not there yet. So at the moment, Shantideva is showing that it's doing the first step, Before I might think, okay, this is a truly existent enemy out there, and he or she has a truly existent anger to truly hurt me, and with a truly existent intention. And so that is dismantled first by Shantideva by bringing in, oh, no, there's nothing truly existent. Everything is based on causes and conditions and interdependence. It is already going in the direction of emptiness, but we are still on the relative side. That's why it's a little bit heavy-ish or solid. But of course, there is, from the absolute point of view, there's none of those. But also on the relative side, if I say I have like, what did I say? I have maybe like an addiction, I have a tendency of being addicted or desire. That of course is also not one thing, but that comes from so many other causes and conditions, Let's say out from 10 causes and conditions, and each of these 10 comes from other 10, and then it's really multiplying, So it's a whole web or net, of causes and conditions coming together before then even I meet somebody that I perceive as an enemy.
Thank you. Yeah, that was helpful.
I think like, when I look at myself alone, I think sometimes it's amazing, that so many people before, so my parents had to meet, to create me, right? There were so many factors coming together that they have met and that they were falling in love, and then they did their thing, and then they raised me properly. Like feeding and so on, There were so many factors in this life, And then each of my both parents, of course, they also had parents and they also had to meet and so on. And then all of them again, so that I'm here, depends on infinite ancestors, grandparents and great-grandparents. It's amazing, how many things were coming together so that I'm happening, you know. I mean, that is of course true for everyone. And then I think whatever molecule we have, this is also on the earth since beginningless time, you know, or since the beginning of earth, you know. It's not something newly created, but it was in other animate things, beings, and other, you know, the atoms, or in inanimate things. You know, it's this is also we cannot trace it back. There's so many myriads of factors coming together just to create one body, you know. No.
It just feels like, I guess, yeah, very vast. It feels like there's no control almost.
Yes.
You're basically just like a ball in a ping pong, I guess, or what are those games?
Yeah, and then I'm not revealing my age here, but since a couple of decades, you know, I got oxygen all the time, you know. That is also a very important factor, you know. If just for 4 minutes I wouldn't have oxygen, I would have been dead already, you know. Just once for 4 minutes only, you know. But no, I could always breathe, you know, like my 10 to 20 cycles per minute, you know, like, and my heart was beating all the time, you know, like 60, 70, 80 times per minute, you know. This is amazing, you know, how, what has to come together, you know, to be here now, you know. Yeah, I don't know, but that is sort of the idea here also, you know, in order that there's an enemy, or that we perceive this person as an enemy, or that this person has anger now with us, and that this person decides to harm us out of that anger. All these things have also these kind of lineages behind, you know, or millions of factors behind, you know, why they appear now. And Shantideva is here at the moment trying to point out that there's not a single factor that has an inherent intention to produce that. It's just because when things come together and there's no obstacle, then things manifest. Like if I have a seed and a soil and water and warmth and time, then the plant will grow. But if there's an obstacle, like the goat who is eating the seed, or the crow, the bird, then of course the plant will not grow. But if the causes and conditions come together and no obstacle, then yes, it will happen. Got it? Yeah. So we are still in at the moment in the relative thing, and now it becomes weird because now we then the Samkhyas. This is a non-Buddhist school which we will talk about more in the 9th chapter. They are saying basically, no, there is an intention, there is some choice behind the appearance of kleshas. And if we look at the Samkhyas, they talk about this prakriti. This is like a primordial or primal substance. And they talk about purusha, which is sort of the self. And then, I think we can go into more details in the 9th chapter. But here the point is, they understand these as the primordial substance. They perceive it as the cause for everything, you know, what happens. So also for the anger in our enemy. So there's some kind of modulation or interaction with the purusha, with the self, and then and that is, they say, intentionally happening. So therefore they say this primordial substance intentionally brings forth anger in the mind. So yeah, just we have to accept that this is apparently what they say. And then the problem is for Shantideva that they say this Purusha, this Prakriti, this primordial substance is, and now that is good to understand, because that is a very Madhyamika thing now. So they say this primordial substance that creates everything is permanent, it is independent, and it is singular. It's not compounded, you know. That is just, yeah, you just have to first accept that they say that. And this is the only thing that Shantideva is now attacking. So when they say, oh actually the anger in the enemy is not without choice, but it is based on this primordial substance, which is permanent, independent, and singular. It is sort of in a teamwork with the Purusha, with the self. It wants to create the anger. That is what is refuted here. And I think it would be helpful if we just go through these 3-4 verses in one go, and then we discuss. Okay. So where are we here? Yeah, so the main thing is have that in mind. You know, they think this is something that is truly existent. This is, so now we are talking really what Marina said, you know, like something heavy, you know. They're talking about something heavy, not compounded, independent, not influenceable, you know, by anything. Truly existent, permanent. So here, 27. That which is asserted as primal substance and that which is imputed as a self, since they are unproduced, do not arise after having purposefully thought, I shall arise in order to cause harm. So normally, from a Madhyamika point of view, you know, whatever we see, you know, my mobile phone here, or the computer, or my glass of water here, that is on the relative level, it is here because causes and conditions came together, because it is produced out of those, yeah? And therefore it exists on the relative level. Yeah, that is very basic explanation of relative truth. But then, Shantideva is saying, if you, Samkhya people, think that something can exist but is unproduced, then that is not possible, because if it's not produced, it cannot even exist. That is really as simple as that, you know. So in other words, Shantideva is comparing this primordial substance. If they say it is unproduced, then Shantideva is saying, okay, if it's unproduced, it cannot exist. And therefore he is comparing it to the classic example of a child of a barren woman. So a woman who is sterile cannot have a child. So the child is unproduced. So therefore it is not existent. And then if it's not existent, this child, then of course that child cannot have any intention. You know, you cannot talk about this child of a barren woman. You cannot say that it's good looking, you know, or that it has a plan to harm me or anything, because it's just not there, you know. So that is the first point of Shantideva when he says, okay, if you say it is unproduced, but still performs, it still has the intention to create the anger in the enemy, that doesn't make sense, because something unproduced doesn't even exist, and therefore something that doesn't exist cannot have an intention. I will just go through the other verses and then we discuss. 28. because once I was trying to talk about this here in a German session, and we discussed on each verse, and it was really like endless. If they are unproduced and non-existent, then whatever wish they have to produce, harm will also not exist. Since the self would be permanently apprehend its objects, it follows that it would never cease to do so. Okay, there are a couple of things in it. So again, they are saying they are unproduced, and Shantideva is saying, and therefore, yeah, they have to be non-existent, and therefore they cannot have a wish or intention, to produce something like harm or anger that I think we have had already, And then the second part of the verse, since the self would be permanently apprehend its objects. So if the self, or Purusha, what I said earlier, is perceiving an object, that is now first a general thinking. So if a self that is permanent, would therefore, if that would perceive an object, it would have to perceive it permanently because itself is permanent. So therefore, it could only perceive that single one object and could never cease to do so. That's written here. So it would only fixate on one object, like anger, and never have any other object in mind. But that is, of course, not the case. We can see our enemy sometimes is even happy, and has no anger. So that is, so the logic here is, I think the first half I said already in 27, and the second half here in 28 is, if there's a permanent perceiver, like let's say the self of the enemy, then then that enemy would perceive whatever it perceives, it cannot change, because change would be the opposite of permanence, so therefore it cannot change the object of perception. It would permanently perceive anger only, or permanently perceive happiness only. But we know that is not the case. People have their moods, their swings, and so on. But you could then argue, if you see that the enemy is sometimes angry and sometimes not, so that already shows that the self of the enemy can perceive two different things, and therefore the self of the enemy cannot be permanent. Thank you for nodding, guys. That gives me courage to go on. I see Marina thinking hard. I hope it's not painful. Okay, then 29. Furthermore, if the self were permanent, it would clearly be devoid of action, just like space. So even if it met with other conditions, how could its unchanging nature be affected? So Shantideva is basically saying again, what you talk about the self and so on being permanent and independent and singular, that doesn't make sense, because if something is permanent, then it cannot perform any action. If you studied Madhyamika, that is also how a creator God is, or a permanent creator God is refuted. It's totally the same logic. If the God is permanent, okay, that's fine. But then he or she cannot be the creator, because creating is a verb apparently. So it is something in the context of time. So there is no creation, then there is creating, like the beginning of creating, and then there's the full creation, and then there's the end of the creation. And so creating something is very much in the framework of time, and in the in the context of change. You know, the God would be in the state of not creating the world, and then he or she would be in the state of creating the world. So there would be a change in the God. So therefore, from Buddha's point of view, the God can either be permanent and therefore totally inert, you know, totally uncreative, or he or she can create stuff, but then he can't be permanent. So that is what is meant here in the first two lines. If the self would be permanent, like if the God would be permanent, yeah, then you cannot create anything. You know, you cannot create anger, and like a space. You know, like you can, you know, table with a wood, you can create something like a table. You know, but with the space, you cannot really create something. That's why space is here used as an example to show that there's no creation happening. And then the second half of 29. So even if it, the permanent self, met with outer conditions, how could its unchanging nature be affected? So Shantideva is just pointing out what the Samkhyas are saying. You know, they're saying it's independent. And therefore it means it is independent of any outer conditions or of any influence from outside. And therefore, if the Samkhyas say, okay, no, it doesn't matter. So therefore, nothing can really influence it. You know, nothing can affect it. So there cannot, there can also not be any outer condition like the primordial substance or anything that could affect the self to perceive the anger. Now that is the whole thing still what we are talking about, you know, how the anger in our enemy comes about, you know, and it cannot come from a self that is permanent. That is basically everything that is said here. And yeah, also here space might be good as a good example. So if this self is like permanent and without action like the space, then also no condition can affect the space, right? We cannot throw paint in the space and by that paint the space. It's not working, you know, or you cannot shoot in the space and create some damage. It's just, it is unaffected by any outer condition, you know, like in these two examples, outer condition of paint or bullets. Okay, nearly done. 30. Even if when acted upon by other conditions, it remains as before, then what could actions do to it? Thus, if I say that this condition acts upon a permanent self, how could the two ever be related? Okay, so let's start with a hypothesis. Okay, Shantideva in 29 already said, okay, the self, if it's permanent, it cannot really be supported or influenced by other conditions. But let's assume, you know, theoretically that this is happening, so that the self, for whatever reason, can be influenced. But again, Shantideva is not believing that. But let's say it can be influenced, and therefore it can perform a function like producing anger in the enemy. So let's assume that. And then there are like, few points. And then Shantideva is saying, even if that would happen, yeah, a permanent self will still not change. It would not be influenced. It cannot be influenced, and it would still be permanent and therefore unchanged. It doesn't matter how many conditions you put onto it. And yeah, if it would change, then by outer conditions, then yes, of course, it's not a permanent self anymore, and therefore it would be an impermanent self, and therefore your thesis doesn't make sense. And so, and the last line here of 30 is just saying, so therefore there is no cause-result relationship between conditions and the permanent self, That is all. Okay, last one here. Hence, everything is governed by other factors, which in turn are governed by others. That is what I meant earlier, like, yes, I'm sort of governed by my parents, and they are in turn governed by their parents, like very coarse example, so it's going endlessly, And in this way, nothing governs itself. Having understood this, I should not become angry with phenomena that are like apparitions. See, now we are coming a little bit into that direction that Marina was praying for. Less from the heavy stuff, but coming into the direction of apparition that is very unheavy. So that is, I think, a typical Madhyamika summary. So Shantideva is saying there cannot be like a permanent, independent, singular self or primordial substance, that in teamwork create anger in the enemy to harm me. That is really the main thought behind. So this cannot be that there's some permanent part, permanent entity playing a part in it. But everything arises because of interdependence. Different causes and conditions come together, and then the enemy comes into being, or the anger comes into being, or my perception of the enemy, my perception of the person as being the enemy comes into being. All of that, is based on so many causes and conditions. And then, from Madhyamika point of view, they always say if something is is existent because of causes and conditions, that means it is not really there, because then, what example can you use? I think table is usually used, you only have 4 legs and a plate, but there's not really a table somewhere. You just have different parts coming together, and then if you look at one leg, that is of course not the table, but it's also not even a leg, because even that one leg is made out of different parts that are not one leg. There's no legness in the leg, but just parts of it, and then each part you can split is smaller, and you will never find a table anywhere. So, so therefore, what we call anger or enemy is not governed by itself. So it's not coming, not having any freedom or any choice to arise, but it just arises, when causes comes together, and that means. It's just a display, that is where there is no solid reality. So it's on the relative level, it's appearing because of causes and conditions, but then on the absolute level, because it is dependent, therefore it is not truly existent, but it's empty. And then apparition is like a classical example, or rainbow, or dream, or mirage, is an example for that, that something appears because of causes and conditions, but then at the same time, it's not really there. And to conclude this part, I show you one verse. I copied that from the 37 practices of Bodhisattvas. It is verse, what was it? 24, which exactly explains that. And then let's discuss. So that is what Gyaltse Tokme says in verse 24 in the 37 practices of a Bodhisattva. The various ills in our life that we suffer resemble the death of our son in a dream. Yeah, that is another example, you know, it has never really been there. So to hold as the truth what is merely illusion is needless exhaustion of body and mind. For this very reason, when faced with unpleasant conditions that normally cause us much grief or anger in this case, approach them if they were only illusion. The sons and daughters of the Buddhas ought practice this way. So the advice here by Gyaltse Tokme in this verse or by Shantideva in our verse is, if we understand that everything is just an illusion, then everything is very not heavy, you know, but very workable, very light, and and not fixed, you know. Then there is not a fixed enemy somewhere, not a fixed anger, but everything is changeable and influenceable. But what the Samkhyas say, you know, something permanent is never influenceable. Okay, that's it in regards to these verses. Please share your doubts or your cries for help or your desperation. I don't know if you have Madhyamika background. It's not a surprise, you know, how Shantideva was handling that. It's really a standard thing, you know, just putting things together like permanent, independent, singular. That doesn't make sense, you know. That cannot exist. That cannot perform any function.
Arne.
Yes.
Well, although the science we have is really regimental, that's the bottom line. But I thought it was really beautiful to see on verse 30, which is just going back to what science is about, which is to identify the cause and conditions, the cause and effect links. And of course, if there is a cause, it has to drive an effect. And Shantideva is saying, hey, if this one is permanent, there is absolutely no way there will be an effect.
Yeah,
it doesn't exist. So this outside conversation that would actually make a change to the permanent self is impossible. It's beautiful because, you know, this is everything, the natural world, everything. It's got, if there is a link, this one will have an effect. So I thought it was very beautiful. And the other one, there was a scientist, actually His Holiness the Dalai Lama was very fond of him, David Bohm. In a sentence, he mentioned that the observer and the observed are the same.
Okay.
That is so, I think it's so Madhyamika. The observer and the observed are the same. Nothing exists outside my own mind. Although I want to believe that it does exist, that when I look at a table, it has an intrinsic existence. It doesn't. Whatever my perception is of that thing, which is called table, it doesn't go outside my own mind. So it came from a scientist. Actually, he was, in terms of the people, he was kind of pushed away. Anyway, but yes, I thought it was so much the verse 31.
Yeah.
You know, talking about a mirage and so on in the Vajrakata Sutra, lightning, mirage, and so on and so forth. Nothing goes outside our own minds. Even anger. If I feel angry and upset and whatever, it's not that the stuff just jumped on my lap, came from outside, and suddenly, oh, I have these solid things. No. it's not solid, it's not intrinsic. But when it happens, the thing is to actually to trigger. It's not solid. It doesn't exist independently. No,
So,
anyway, I thought it was very beautiful. I thought they were very, very clever.
yes. And regarding this observed and observer, that is also in Tibetan, you know, there's this one word, nangwa. It means perception and it also means appearance, you know, it means both, you know, and that's really interesting. For them, it's so clear, you know, that how it appears depends so much on my perception, you know, and how I perceive stuff determines so much how it appears, you know. Like the beauty or the ugly lies in the eyes of the beholder, you know, it's so up to us. And hence Vajrayana pure perception can work, you know. Any other comments, doubts, remarks about these verses? If not, we continue. It's from now on, it's easy. Yeah, but also what Emilia was saying and Shantideva, or Shantideva and Emilia, that yeah, if it's illusory, there's nothing really solid, you know. So it comes and goes, you know. Nothing is fixed, but yet it appears if the factors come together. Oh yeah, now actually comes the verse that I was advertising earlier on. So here, when I was talking with Marina, I think I said, you know, when we talk about emptiness, then or apparition here, then why then patience is even necessary if anger is an apparition or empty by nature, and patience is an apparition and empty by nature. So what's the big deal, you know? Why not leave anger as it is without any antidote to it? That is what our doubt might be. That is also said here in 32. If everything is unreal, like an apparition, then who is there to restrain what anger? Yeah, so if I'm angry, you know, that is not real, then I is also not real, of course. And then that is the doubt. And then Shantideva is answering. So basically, in the doubt, you would also say, therefore, yeah, patience is just not necessary. You know, restraint would be patient. You know, patience. And then Shantideva is basically saying first, yes, of course, you are right on the ultimate level. You know. So he's saying, surely in this case, restraint would be inappropriate. So yes, if you are abiding in the ultimate nature of mind and things and phenomena, then there is no suffering, you know, and then of course you don't need to do anything, you know, because then you see the empty nature of anger, you see the empty nature of the antidote, which is patience, you see the empty nature of suffering, you see the empty nature of samsara and nirvana and all of that. So everything has that one taste. So therefore, no need to put some effort, you know, no need to restrain yourself on the absolute level. But in case we are not there yet, it would not be inappropriate. So on the relative level, he's saying no. So in other words, it would be appropriate to practice patience or restraint, because conventionally I must maintain that independence upon restraining anger, the steam or stream maybe, right, of suffering is cut, severed. So again, on ultimate level, it is like like waking up from a dream, you know, like the example is, you know, let's say I dream I'm a woman in Afghanistan, and I give birth to 3 kids, and then all of the 3 kids die in my dream, and then I wake up as Arne, you know. So after I gave birth in the dream, I was of course super happy, and then when they die in my dream, my 3 kids, then I'm of course super sad, you know. But then when I wake up, then that is sort of, I wake up to the absolute level. So then I know, oh, everything was a dream. The birth was not really there. The death was not really there. The happiness was not really having a base, you know, and my sadness didn't have any base. From the absolute level, yes. Therefore, from that level, I also don't need a remedy against my sadness, you know. I don't need to go to a therapist, you know, because the sadness was not really there. Here, you know, if the anger is not really there, of course, we don't need a remedy like patience. But in case you are not awake, you know, in case you don't realize the ultimate, then if we are stuck on the relative level, that means if we are still in the dream and not knowing that we are dreaming, then everything looks and sounds and feels so real. And then, of course, we have happiness when we have 3 kids, and then we suffer when we lose them. And then we need an antidote against the suffering. So therefore, we need then patience against the suffering of anger. So therefore, on the absolute level, of course, no antidote is necessary. On the relative level, it is necessary, because if I don't remedy my relative anger, then it creates relative suffering, and I will have also the karmic result of anger that could even manifest as a relative hell realm, or just even more intense suffering. So therefore, on a relative level, that is just the principle of cause and effect. You know, anger leads to suffering. And therefore, on the relative level, we need to stop it. And that's why Buddha, who is awake, you know, who sees the absolute nature and who doesn't need an antidote to anything, but he knows that we are not seeing that, but that we are stuck on the relative level, and therefore he has to teach the relative methods also. You know, my point is, from his point of view, he doesn't need to teach those things because he's awake, you know. But he knows that we are not, and therefore he has to teach patience. Is that convincing? Let's assume that, as Shantideva was meaning or was saying that. Is that convincing? Yeah, it's always good to not mix relative and absolute. Like in the teachings, people often ask those things, you know, like, oh, if there's no self, what is reborn? Do you see the mixing? No self is talking from the absolute truth, and then rebirth is talking from the relative truth, you know. You either say no to both or yes to both, you know. So yes, there's a relative self that is relatively reborn. Or you say there is no self and there's no rebirth, you know. But you can't mix it. And therefore here it's the same, you know. If you say anger is not truly there, if you have that ultimate view, then yes, there's also no need for antidote to anger. But as long as you believe as long as you are entangled in anger, you need an antidote that is untangling us.
Sorry. And Arne, Arne.
Yes.
I think that when he's calling on patience, well, people who are very patient, it seems that it's the opposite of being impulsive. So even if the anger is there, the feeling of anger, but through being patient, is just holding. Just staying rather than being impulsive with one's actions of what they say and what they do. I think patience may be the antidote in terms of, maybe not in terms of creating a gap. I think it's still the understanding that anger is just not solid. I think would still go a long way, but patient people, even when they are angry, they just, they hold, don't they? Compared to being very impulsive, where it arrives and it leaves. And then damage is done.
Actually, Shantideva, in earlier verses, he is saying that we should not even get angry, in the sense that we should be very mindful and aware that when we see the like small frustration or bitterness or irritation, if we perceive that, that is sort of the fuel of anger. So for him, that is because then we can still work with that, because irritation or frustration is workable. It's weaker. It's not so solid and full grown. Yeah, because he thinks if we don't do that, but then let anger come, let frustration develop into anger, then it's very difficult to handle that, because then you can only suppress it or express it, or you somaticize it. I can never pronounce that word. So either you suppress it and you have mental problems, or you express it and you harm others, or you manifest a disease or something, So therefore he's strongly advising that we meditate, surprise, and are very aware and mindful, like with these small irritations and frustrations we have in our mind, so that they don't even give rise to anger. And then again, to put it in the context of bodhicitta, can I find the verse actually? No. Oh yeah, here's 7. Having found its fuel of mental unhappiness. So that is what I meant with irritation or frustration, in the prevention of what I wish for. So when we don't get what we want, and or that we get what we don't want, then if we have that frustration, then anger increases or hatred increases, and that destroys us. So therefore we have to detect that small plant of irritation or frustration as soon as possible. I forgot what I wanted to say. Yeah. To bring it in context of bodhicitta. So that, of course, we do, because then if anger is not filling up our mind, but if we can let go of that frustration and irritation, then we have much more space in our mind to be compassionate and to be wise in a specific situation. That is the main point, that is what we want to achieve. But of course, what Emilia is saying, since often, at least for me, I'm not managing that, how I just said, but I notice the anger when it's really there, and I don't notice the small starts of it. So if I already have anger, then yes, at least then it's still better not to express it. Yes, and because we might hurt others, but of course we should also not suppress it, but we should find a way to maybe to bring it into a good direction, or to express it in a very in a way like exercise or something, where there is nobody harmed. Okay, let's do one more or two more verses. 34, I think, is next. I have to go back to that. Oh, yeah, now we come to a whole other part of the chapter. How to put, where we sort, we are still having our enemies, and they are harming us. And here now we understand that in the following verses, like 34 to 51, that it's sort of natural that samsaric people harm each other. We cannot really expect something else from them, So that is a little bit we are not so shocked or surprised, if somebody is lying to us or using harsh words or is angry with us, because that is how samsaric people are, like in kindergarten, the kids are there and they it's natural that they get whatever virus and have a running nose. That is sort of part of the kindergarten experience. And likewise in samsara, it's also part of that, that we harm each other, that we misunderstand each other, that beings are not under control, that they didn't master their mind, and that they unwillingly, without control, come into difficult situations and hurt us without meaning like that. That is the idea of the following verses, that we just understand, it's part of it, and I think examples are given like fire, fire is by nature hot. So that's it, So that if you then put your hand in it, of course it burns. So likewise, yes, if we interact with samsaric beings, yes, of course it hurts here and there. And just knowing that then helps, I think, also to not take it so personal. Like I used to work I think 5 years in psychiatry, and it was the same. The patients, of course, they say things that are very hurtful, but if yes, they don't have control over their mind. They and they're sick or whatever. Then one doesn't need to take it personal at all. So likewise, we are all having that disease called samsara, so therefore we are all patients in that way, and therefore we are unnecessarily hurting each other. So that needs to be expected, sort of. That is the idea. Marina.
With this, so I guess question came up was, can this be applied, I guess, to the self as well? Like when you're doing certain types of meditation, like things might pop up that you're not anticipating, or some, like your own inner mental patient comes out basically. And, it's like
your inner child, right?
Yeah, right. So, and there, yes. And so can you like, would this always be also kind of just applying, I guess, a patience towards that entity or towards that inner, thought process that might be happening?
Yes, I think that's a good point. I think maybe meditation is exactly that, that from our meditation point of view, yes, we expect us to be crazy and confused. Yes. And so it's not, we should not be shocked, surprised, or feel bad or guilty about it. But yeah, I think it's a good point to apply that to oneself. And then, yeah, that's at the moment how I am on the superficial level, you know, confused and totally bananas. Yeah. And then, yeah, and then one doesn't need to take it personal in the sense like we don't have to identify with this banana-ness, I don't know, with that confusion or, yeah. No, I think that's a good point to see it in oneself. Yeah. Yeah, like, I don't know, stupid example, but usually I can walk straight on a line, walk the line, right? That is Johnny Cash songs, right? I can walk on a line straight, but then if I drink a lot of alcohol, then I sort of expect that I can't do it, you know? And then I'm much more gentle and patient with myself, you know, and I perceive it even as a great achievement if I can do it. So likewise, if we understand that we are totally drunk all the time, like because we're in samsara, so therefore we expect that that we have mistakes, yeah, and faults, you know, and I think that acknowledgement is great, yeah. And then also we don't have to be so hypocrite or pretentious in front of others. If we sort of agree, yes, we are. Of course, there are small differences, but yeah, we are sort of all in the same samsaric boat, I guess. Yeah, maybe that's a really good point. Yeah, especially in the West, you know, when we maybe are then aggressive against ourselves because we don't fulfill our high expectations, you know. Because if we acknowledge that we are in samsara, that we are a patient, sort of, you know, then yeah, that lowers our expectations, you know, and that's more realistic. And then we have also less reason to be aggressive with ourselves, you know.
Arne, it's just linking with what Marina mentioned on the meditation and in relation to ourselves, that to be accepting, to be compassionate and so on. And I really can't remember when was that. I was participating in a discussion, a group discussion, and people mentioned that maybe more in the West than in the East, that we tend to be, we think about compassion, love and compassion towards everyone else, and we exclude ourselves and really beat ourselves up for, you know, not being like pristine thoughts and awareness and all of it, really bad on ourselves, rather than understanding that when one is meditation on the four immeasurables and the praying and so on, we are to be included as well. So I think this links with what Marina is saying.
Yeah, exactly.
In meditation, if some stuff happens, so just be gentle.
Yeah, I think the Dalai Lama, when he first came to the West, he was sort of surprised that people have this hatred against themselves. This was something he didn't hear before, you know, and yeah, and as you said, you know, I mean, it is never said, it is maybe said, but usually we always say enlightenment for the benefit of all beings, or may all beings be happy and, you know, and have the causes of happiness, and may all beings be free from suffering. So of course we are part of all beings, but yes, we sort of forget that maybe. And yeah, patience is towards oneself is super important, and yeah, it doesn't work, you know. We cannot be gentle to others if we are very harsh with ourselves, you know. And I think sometimes people, they shout at themselves so much, like, and they would never do that to somebody else, you know, but to themselves, maybe there's a habit, or yeah, but of course one doesn't deserve that either, you know. Okay, let's look. Okay, we have 3 more minutes. Let's just look into that verse, because that is a classical, often recited verse. I think Effie Khenchen Pema Rinpoche, I think in his introductions, is always quoting that one or paraphrasing that one. No, maybe not, but a little bit. If things were brought into being by choice, so if people could really do what they wish, you know, then since no one wishes to suffer, so that is also clear, right? Everybody wants happiness and nobody wants to suffer even the slightest. So if that would be the case, you know, that one that one's wishes would be fulfilled, you know, then suffering would not occur to any sentient beings. But the tragedy is that, and that is actually, I think, the verse, Effie, that Khenchen Rinpoche is quoting in another chapter. The tragedy is really being so ignorant in the sense of not knowing what are the causes for happiness and not knowing what are the causes for suffering, and therefore on their way or while they are wishing for happiness, they sort of destroy the happiness as if it would be their enemy, because they unknowingly they create even more causes for suffering. So that is, I think that is an auto-destructive tendency, definitely, which is based on ignorance, just not knowing, you know, not knowing what are the causes for happiness and what are the causes for suffering. And then on top of that, of course, even if we know, we still are very so habituated that, like smoking, you know, we know smoking is bad, but then yes, we still do it, you know, that kind of thing we have also with our negative emotions. We know that, I mean, I think we know from Buddhist point of view, or maybe just from common sense, that negative emotions make us suffer and make us blind and unfair and all of that. But even though we know that theoretically, out of habit, it just continues we just continuously getting into them again and again. And therefore, we do negative actions, and therefore we create negative karma, and therefore we experience suffering. And so therefore, Shantideva is saying here, it is, even though it is our wish to be free from suffering, we still don't have choice, you know, because our actions are contradictory to our wishes. Yeah, and the point is, and here we are still talking about our enemies, you know, what we want to understand. But as Marina started, you know, we can of course always apply to ourselves. But here we are still talking about our enemies, that they wish to be happy, but for whatever reasons, and for many reasons, they get angry. And by that, they only create more and more suffering for themselves and others, and therefore they distance themselves from the happiness they originally wanted. So just seeing that tragedy should inspire us to be compassionate with them. Yeah, that is the point here. So like on their search for happiness, they only come closer to suffering. And then, yeah, you can bring the standard contemplation, I think, from Atisha, you know, and that matters to us. Why? Because all sentient beings have been our mothers or sisters or brothers or fathers and so on in previous lives. And they have been very kind to us, or lovers, you know, and they've been very kind and caring for us. So therefore we want to give that back, you know, and protect them from them running more and more into suffering. Okay, so Bodhicitta is always our starting point and also our final point, I think. So thank you, guys. Oh yeah, today was Guru Rinpoche Day. I think I didn't mention Guru Pema Gyalpo, right, when he was a king, invited by Indra Bodhi, marrying the princess, I think. Yeah, so please remember Guru Rinpoche. And if you have time, next Sunday, I think we will meet. That is Longshenpa's anniversary. Okay, let's dedicate something. Sorry, coming soon. Here. Jon might know this prayer book. By this merit, having attained omniscience and defeated the enemy of wrongdoing, may I free all beings from the ocean of existence with its tumultuous waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. Just as the heroic Manjushri who knows everything as it is, and as Samantha Bhatta likewise did too, just so to follow all of them and train myself, I perfectly dedicate these meritorious actions. May this precious Supreme Bodhicitta arise in those in whom it has not arisen. Having arisen, may it not diminish, but ever expand more and more. As long as space remains, and as long as the world remains, may it too remain to elevate the suffering of the world. May I, in each and every lifetime, carry the weight of Buddha Shakyamuni's teachings. And if I cannot bear that weight, at the very least may I be born with the burden of thinking that the Buddha Dharma could reign. Thank you. Have a nice evening.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Arne.
Thank
Ciao,
you.
everyone. See you next
Thank
week.
you.
Right.
Bananas. Okay, thank you.